In today's video, I'm gonna share with you top 7 of the rarest openings so that you can win so many games with these openings, and it is also aggressive and that has a very high win rate. First off with white, we got e4, e5, knight to f3, still a common move, and knight to c6 is just developing another knight, and we move on to the 4 knights game. Nothing special, very popular, but now things change because knight to e5 is gambiting your own knight. And it is a very rare gambit. And why are we sacrificing that big? Because if they take our knight on e5, we will go pawn to d4 and attack their knight again. If they go back, no worries. We'll just shove our pawn forward and keep harassing the knight. What will happen is that they can go back b8 and we continue pushing, and now we have a very strong center. And if they go back, we even have this little tactic: pawn to d6, they take, we take back, queen to f6 is the best move. That is not really good because we go knight to b5, and now this is an underlying fork right here. What they will do is knight to a6, trying to defend that square on c7, and we will go bishop to c4, and now already, according to computer, plus 75% more win rate than our opponent. But if they don't do that, instead go here back on e5, well folks, we'll just keep harassing them with pawn to f4, keep attacking their knight. They have to move back. We push the pawn again, and they have to move back. Now, folks, it's a matter of time before all of their pieces are in the background, and there's still a dangerous tactic where we have this very big center, and we can use it to go forward with d6, and if they take, we will take back, and what will happen is something similar. Queen to b6 is the best move. Believe it or not, the position is already balanced over here. We will just dominate with knight to b5. Remember that the sniper bishop is protecting that knight, plus this fork is coming. What will happen then is they have the knight here. They have to protect it with a king. For the second opening, again with white, e4, e5, the most common response is knight to e2, a very rare move. Why are we doing this? Now folks, this is the nightmare variation. Why? Because if they go knight to f6, what will happen is that we will go pawn to f4, gambit our pawn, and if they take our pawn on f4, well folks, we will take back. They will most likely take back, and so we will go queen to a2, attack that knight, pin it to the king. And what will happen is that they might go queen to e7, just try to neutralize. Because if they don't, well folks, d5 and then d3 will attack the knight completely, and they will blunder their own knight because the knight cannot move because of this pin, and we're just gonna take the knight early on the board. If they don't do that and neutralize the pin, the queen is neutralizing the pin, so we neutralize that. Knight to d5 attacks the queen. The queen has to move here, and still, they're neutralizing the pin. So, we will go and add another knight to the board and attack this knight on e4, because what will happen is that they will try to attack our knight, and we will go pawn to d4. This attacks the queen. They have to go here, right? But no, that is a fork. So, folks, what will they do? They could go here, take the pawn. But that is a very, very seriously bad mistake, because none of the forked over here. But instead of taking the knight on e4, which if they take first our knight with a queen over here on d5, we go for a discovered attack where we take their queen, they move their king, we take their queen. And if they take it with a pawn, we go knight to d6, and it's already mate in 8. So folks, they will have to move this, the queen infiltrates, the king has to move, and it's mate in 7. The next opening, knight to c3, pawn to e5. Knight to c3, bringing out your knight first instead of a pawn is a rare game, but in this opening, folks, it is very, very dangerous. Because if we go pawn to f4, trying to bait them, well, if they take the pawn on f4, king to f2 is a very, very weird move, and it's a very, very dangerous move. Bishop to c4 is a check. We will go pawn to d4 and attack their own bishop protected by the queen. This is a very dangerous gambit though, so I don't recommend it. We are winning because of the material advantage over here, and we'll just protect this square from the queen. If they don't do that, but instead go h4 right away, well folks, they are already in complete doom, because pawn to g3 attacks the queen. They have to take, we have to move, because folks, what will happen is that if they take again, well folks, we take back with a rook, and suddenly there are the ones who are attacked. They have to check again with the bishop on d6 because they need more pieces to attack. This queen is going to be massacred because of the bishop on h3. They have to move on h4, escaping from the bishop. Well, this is already a discovered attack. Blunder from the game. So folks, but g3 though, nothing. We'll just create tempo and we'll just develop until they lose. Now for the next opening, this next opening is also the same concept but with a queen on d5. Opening, folks, if they go and try to take our pawn, we take and we develop it, and we have more development, and we have a stabilized center where we are very aggressive. But folks, if they don't do that, instead go d4, because this looks like the nightmare variation, but we instead use the other knight, and what will happen is that they will go here. They look like they are winning, but folks, they are clearly not, because we're still developed, and most people do this. They might go push here, might go push and take some more space, but we're gonna develop and attack this pawn, which leads them to develop this knight and try to protect on e5. That is really good move, but bishop to c4 is just a fatal move over here. Now you got knights and bishops trying to go for this pawn. What will happen is very greatly chaos, because after knight to f6, we can just go knight to g5 and exploit this pawn to f7. They might go here and try to defend, but folks, that is nothing, because when we take, they will take back. We will have so much power over here in this position. But the next opening is nothing compared to that opening, because pawn to e4, pawn to e5. But now if they go here, we go for the Latvian gambit. Well, folks, that gambit is a pawn. They could either take this pawn on e5 on an f5. Well, folks, what will happen if they first take the pawn on f5, we push, we attack their knight, and we completely have a knight on the center of the board, d4. And it's very weak. Knight to f6, protecting the pawn on e4, and we have a solid position than them. And if they go here, d3, c5 attacks the knight. They go back knight to b3, we take the pawn on d3, and they have to take, right? Because what happens in this position is that we create incredible threats. This gambit creates incredible threats, and your opponents don't know what to do. With that combo, they don't know what to do, and they just, we already have a fork and attack on the pawn on f5. But if they take the e5 pawn, what will happen? Queen to f6, attacking the knight. They might go queen to h5, trying to check us, but that is a fork. So a lot of people would not do that, but keep in mind that happens. We just go pawn to g6, try to fork them. But folks, if that doesn't happen, well, folks, knight takes e5, queen to f6, d4 might happen, which allows them to have a good center and try to defend their knight. It's a good move. However, d6 here is an exceptional move which kicks out the knight, and they have to go back to c4. Now, their center is crumbling because we now take the pawn on e4, and now we have the center back. And we're just gonna push this pawn, and we're gonna win the game because we have a much stronger center than their crippling knight and their pawn in the center. Don't forget, we still have a piece here which is eyeing on this very good diagonal. Don't forget also that we have an open position, and also we got two of our pawns in the center while they are not, which makes their king exposed, which also makes them vulnerable, very vulnerable. Pawn to e4, this is the next opening. e5, pawn to f4. This is the king's gambit, right? If they take, we go here. No, this is not naturally the king's gambit, because if this is the king's gambit, it wouldn't be rare at all. But what we're gonna do here is something crazy. Bishop to e7, bishop to c4. Now we're allowing this check because we are allowing it to be aggro done. Because what will happen is something crazy. There is a very rare opening because almost none of people play this, because it is so scary. Because if this check happens, we go g3. They take. Why are we doing this? They take. And attack our king. We go h1 safely in that square. What they will do is protect that pawn. This is the most aggressive gambit I've ever seen so far, by the way. And we will take the f7 pawn. That is a sacrifice. Well, folks, if they take, this is a very bad attack. And believe it or not, we are winning in this position by 0.5 points. And they could take the pawn on e5. And it's now the England gambit. But folks, there's something different. If they take the pawn on d6, bishop to d6, bishop to g4 is an attack to the knight, and they have to go knight to c3. We go knight to c6, and then if they go pawn to e3, well, folks, they are already underdeveloped, first of all, and queen to e7, bishop to e2, they are most likely to castle there. They castle here, they castle there, and what happens is something crazy. The Charlotte Gambit exploits this. We take the knight on f3, and if they take back, bishop to d2 opens up the rook to the queen, but it's checked, so they have to take, and we have to take the queen. And it's a balanced game, but we're winning by 3.9 points because they lose a queen, and a queen is just better if they don't do that though, and instead cover or own discovered attack. Well, folks, we are gonna go knight to f6, develop another piece in the game, because if they castle, we go h5, trying to make our bishop sacrifice. If they go h3 and let them take our bishop, well, folks, this rook here is very powerful, and this bishop. What if happens is that they're provoked by the pawn, and we're just gonna take this opportunity to check them, and we're just winning according to the game, because after this, bishop to h2, king to h1, we go back to e5, and what will happen is that they go back one more time, we take the bishop on d2, and this is attacked. They have to take, it is the best move, king to b8 is the best move, and then they have to go bishop to h3, and now it's lost because we take the the queen on d1, and we just win the game by plus 3 points. And those are all the rare gambits and all the rare openings that you should try in this game and this chess video. See you guys in the next video. Please go in depth into this opening, because if you don't, you will be completely wrecked by counter attacks. But I will guarantee you, these gambits are very aggressive, very rare. Maybe your opponent doesn't know how to, and more likely your opponent doesn't know how to defend against. See you guys in the next video. Please subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video. Peace out.